Hello, hi, and hello. This is James. Hello, this is James. Just have to test one more time. Hello. Hello, this is James. I just have to apologise tonight for the sound issue. I'll just have to go to the settings. Some kind of problem with my snowball mic. Maybe it needs something doing to it, or just have to...
Hello, hello, hello. Is that any different? Hello. That sounds better. If not a bit too loud. Yeah, I just have to apologise for that initial sound audio problem here. Ever since I was using this, basically I was using this sort of audio program that changes your voice mod, I think it's called, and I uninstalled it off of the laptop. I've got a ThinkPad now because I managed to find these on eBay. They're used mainly for people who work in offices or management or whatever they might be doing. And they're pretty good sort of business laptops, but they have often a surplus of them, so they sell them off on eBay. And all I can say is, I had a certain amount of memory and RAM added and all of that kind of thing, which I'm not well versed in what it all means, but it's just strange because I had that voice mod program on here, and then I thought it just kept popping up all the time every time I opened up the laptop. So I deleted it and thought, I don't need that really for the time being, at least. Maybe it would be good if you wanted to record your own music and put your own vocals on it a little bit with reverb on or something. But and yet, despite having deleted it off of the computer entirely, when I plug in the Blue Snowball mic, it seems to have some kind of memory of the especially that sort of demonic possession voice, which is, for me, it is quite terrifying, since I am at the moment, and will be for the next month, certainly, up to Christmas or so, I will be completing a short film about the hell of demonic possession, mainly caused by, addiction to the internet. the net, as you know, I like to call it, and the name of the Sandra Bullock film, The Net. So, you know, I want to make a film. I want to make a film with a message, and so I do think that addiction to the net can have, you know, horrible consequences. Certainly more horrible than just having your voice distorted when you don't want it distorted. I mean, and I'm not even making any of that up. I'm not putting the voice on deliberately on the computer. It really was doing what I said. I have no idea why, but you know, and I'm not thinking it up as some kind of part of the film or something. You know, maybe computers do have memories, and in just the same way as Mandela Man often, you know, seems to be in a quite well, you know, I said to him that his obsession seemed at times manic, and I feel like I can say that based on my own experiences. And he said, you know, James, I'm not mentally ill and all this kind of thing. And I said, you know, it doesn't really matter whether you're seen as mentally ill or not. That's not the question. It's more just how is your, you know, how is your whole behavior and involvement with an AI bot or, you know, the internet, how is it benefiting you? And if it doesn't benefit you directly, then there is a degree of insanity in that. You know, if you keep going back to something which doesn't benefit you, you know, you could even go into saying, to expanding that whole idea into just fandom in general. You see, we don't sort of just get up in the morning and then suddenly think, okay, I'm going to be a, you know, a massive fan of Different Strokes, or, you know, The Cosby Show, The Incredible Hulk, The A-Team, or The Fall Guy, or Street Hawk. I mean, The Fall Guy is now being made into a film with Ryan Gosling. So obviously somebody is a fan of it, but I don't necessarily think that to go and see that film, The Fall Guy, necessitates anybody to be a fan of the original show, The Fall Guy, which I remember, you know, for us growing up, that was like the ultimate TV show because it involved, you know, a main star who was what we did, you know, saw as youngsters as being a real man. Secondly, you know, it had a good truck in it and a good car. So I don't know what other show could have competed with The Fall Guy. Maybe Dukes of Hazzard. But I think my point is, you know, if you are now, say, a massive fan of the Dukes of Hazzard in 2023, and you sort of go on and on about it daily online, possibly in you know, if there was a Dukes of Hazzard meetup, for instance, in Birmingham or something, you know, you go to that, etc. But if it doesn't benefit you in terms of primarily, you know, the social aspect of it, then I don't really know, you know, what is the point of it all. And of course, if it is in some way destructive for you, you know, that is a sort of pretty much, you know, regardless of what anyone thinks in terms of, you know, psychiatry or something. I mean, obviously, if it's not benefiting you and it has something of a deleterious sort of effect, destructive, then, you know, that's pretty insane. And I think many people who are in the Twin Peaks kind of, you know, community, etc., there is a degree of I think they do need to ask themselves sometimes, why am I such a big fan of it? And there's nothing wrong with trying to expand your perspective so that you think, you know, well, what does the average person who's hardly ever seen Twin Peaks think of it? This kind of thing. Well, thank you for the chat generally so far. I think, you there's a few other people who could probably come online if you can tell them to do that. I mean, obviously, I've gone a bit late today because I didn't think I was going to do a show. Mainly because there was just no one really around. And secondly, I don't want to do a show when really, there's no preparation for it. And we've not watched, say, all of the episodes of the new show, A Murder at the End of the World, which I would say I am keen on, and it is definitely one of the better shows I've seen since Twin Peaks: The Return. So, hello there to Charlotte. How are you doing? Thank you, Phantom Cooper. I appreciate that. Well, if you don't notice much, or if I wouldn't notice much in terms of performance benefits, in terms of RAM, then that's a good example of me not knowing anything about computers. But I think, in terms of what you're saying, video editing or so forth, I mean, you can have like as good a running machine, laptop as possible or computer, but it's the software itself that you're using that can sometimes be the problem. And you have to make sure also that you're using an editing program that backs itself up automatically, unless you want to just keep clicking on save, every 5 minutes or something like that, because you want to save obviously how far you've got in terms of editing things and not have to just start from the beginning again, even though that could probably be a good learning exercise. Yeah, I mean, people still do surf the web, Phantom Cooper, I think. I mean, it's not like people, come online and then do something particularly different nowadays compared to what it was like in 2003 or something, 20 years ago. I can imagine, well, I can remember, what it was like coming online back then in 2003, and it was pretty much the same as it is now, apart from probably a bit slower, and you had dial-up, which made some noise. I'm not sure many people would be going online using laptops back then. I suppose some people might have been, but it wasn't like a pop, it wasn't something which was known about particularly. But there was some pretty well developed websites back then. But just the nature of things has changed, like when people, like there used to be Yahoo Chat, and that was one of the first sort of chats I ever went on. Well, and probably about the last chat I went on. And I mean, at the time, it seemed pretty enjoyable. Well, I think like with Mandela Man, though, he's obviously he's been through some pretty bad experiences in terms of his brother ending up stealing his car and then getting arrested whilst holding a knife in some kind of clinic where he said he was stealing medication for the homeless. I mean, I don't know. I mean, can you put yourself in his shoes? Personally, I would find that very difficult to imagine myself in Mandela Man's predicament, but I can certainly sympathise with it. And I don't want to go into anything more personal than he's already talked about, but I think, it's not my place to really talk about it. But secondly, I do think it definitely has had a big effect on him, and it probably will take a long time to recover from it. And My only thing is that I think he should be spending more time recovering from it, So, hello there to Nicholas, and thank you for your comment. I watched Inland Empire with the new transfer, and it makes such a difference. I struggled to watch it previously. I always got so far or watched it in bits. I appreciated it much more this time. Well, with Inland Empire, it's the first time I saw it in the cinema in Nottingham at the Broadway cinema. I mean, it just, for me, it just felt a bit too full on, in terms of the way it was filmed and the sort of extreme close ups. And then that coupled with obviously the picture being very grainy, because of it being shot on a Sony PD 150, which even for the time was not a new camera, it's not like, it's only kind of semi professional, whatever that means. And so, well, that's what Lynch said. But, it's kind of a film that you have to be relaxed to watch. Like, ideally, in a home setting, is probably quite good, because I sent off for the 2-disc American DVD and, just watched it all at home, and then even watched the More Things That Happened, which was like an extra 90 minutes plus. So, when you're in a home setting, depending on the kind of film, you can be more relaxed generally. And I don't think that necessarily Lynch's films create a general feeling of, they're not particularly sedate. Apart from maybe, say, if you go to, say, The Straight Story, but everything else is far more. It's just got this undercurrent of, emotional instability or a panicky feeling at times, because of the contrast between scenes where it's quite slow or seemingly a bit more sedate, and then it goes into something which is more anxiety inducing. And so I did find it easier to watch when I went to see it when I got it for the home viewing and everything. And this is going back quite a while now. We're not talking the best TV to watch it on. So I think now if it's on a remastered Blu-ray or 4K or whatever, I mean, it's bound to be a more enjoyable viewing experience. But generally, when I was watching it in the cinema, I started feeling quite panicky myself. So I would go out to the toilet, and then, I wasn't exactly in a rush to be particularly bothered about what I've missed. But I had pretty much the same experience when I saw Lost Highway. I just, even though I think they're decent films as such compared to, the average films you find released and everything. I mean, I don't necessarily think that Inland Empire and Lost Highway are the top of Lynch for me, necessarily. In terms of just sort of the viewing experience. Hello there, Trapped in Plastic, aka Millie. It is a bit late, but not that late. I'm here. I watched Manodrome last night. It was pretty good, says Phantom Cooper. A Mysterious Family of Men. It's got 2.5 out of 5 on IMDb. Conflicted about his girlfriend's pregnancy, Ralphie's life spirals out of control when he meets a mysterious family of men. I'm not sure. It's got Jesse Eisenberg, Adrian Brody. So sounds like a good cast so far. But a family of men, I'm not quite sure what that means. I suppose it just means a bunch of brothers or something. Hello, Mr. Dukick. Yeah, Cure for Wellness. I've never really watched the whole thing of that because I just was not feeling really like, involved in it. Yes, it is visually impressive, but Davrin, obviously continuing the private messaging you did with me today and last night, where, as you admitted to yourself, or admitted to me, you said that you were indulging in mischief in terms of just going round and round in asking me questions about things to do with Cameron, nothing to do with me, as in, when is Cameron going to do a follow-up video to the one about Lynch that he did also with Mr. C, his son, and things like this. And then, of course, it went into more, like attacks on Cameron and calling him this, that, and the other, and egotistical, or thinking he's going to have a career in Hollywood or something like this. And I kept insisting to you, please, can you just stop going on and on about Cameron? If you want to write to me, it just doesn't make any sense. Because, like I told you, I don't have regular contact with Cameron. And now the comments about, do you make any planning for what you're going to watch at Christmas? I already told you in our private chat. No, I don't make any. I mean, clearly you're trying to ask me that because you think everybody should make plans to watch stuff at cinema at Christmas. But for me, I think there's more important things in terms of Christmas and everything than just sitting around watching more stuff, especially if it's Christmas themed, because I generally don't think that there are very many great Christmas sort of themed movies, or whatever, really. I mean, I think you can enjoy it in different ways with music and things like that. What music will you be listening to at Christmas? You tell me, rather than just asking me questions all the time. It's like, the reason for this chat is more people can get on with each other rather than just field me with questions. So think about that. No, I don't play any instruments, Charlotte. I tried to start learning to play the piano when I was younger, but I didn't have a great, love for it, really, I suppose, so much. Whereas my brother and sister took to it more favorably. I think I was more interested in other things at the time, like, Spectrum 48K games or movies or something like that, or going out with my friends underneath motorways in drainage pipes. Yeah, that's definitely true, Phantom Cooper. I do think people keep using the same sites all the time, and if I didn't have access to Facebook, for instance, I would probably go to Reddit for people writing about films and Twin Peaks, etc., or other shows like A Murder at the End of the World, because it's like it's got sort of quite a free discussion of things. Probably the fact that people are granted anonymity there means that they can be a little bit more open with their thoughts at times, whereas I do think Facebook can be a little bit of a popularity contest, and people are a little bit too self-aware on there. So there's people like Davrin on there with a profile photo that's like 15 years old because they are either a wanted criminal or just insecure, probably. And whilst I totally understand that kind of insecurity, it's never something that I personally have really struggled with. I mean, the amount of photos I've put on Facebook is ridiculous, but it's all a matter of choice. I suppose that's the ideal that Facebook has, gives people that much choice to just upload thousands of photos of this is what I'm watching this Christmas. the film A Christmas Story, which obviously, you know, I've seen that film a lot of times. Don't shoot your eye out and all this kind of thing, but it, you know, becomes just like familiarity breeds contempt, and you think, why are people posting this kind of stuff all the time? You know, it's nothing new. So, or, you know, I'm watching Scrooged at Christmas with Bill Murray. I mean, you know, I saw that film originally on the cinema back in the day, you know, with a bunch of youngsters like myself hyped up on Jolt Cola and, you know, ice cream and Murray mints or something. But you know, it was that's how it was ideal, you know, as a film. And then playing out, you know, with the Annie Lennox and the guy singing and stuff like that, you know, and giving you that kind of warm tingle feeling of a sort of happiness that Christmas should be about, really. Whether you're on your own, whether you're with, you know, a family, whether you're with, you know, your loved ones or not, really. I think everybody should be able to find some solace, at least within the coldest months, of course. And I think that's the general idea of it. You know, it's not supposed to necessarily have some kind of massive religious import if that's not your bag, you know. I think, you know, as long as you're not, I don't know, going across the country on a road trip to Disneyland on Christmas with Mandela Man, I think everything should be all right generally. So, you know. Phantom Cooper says, more importantly, Mandela Man got banned from Disney. That's probably more detrimental to his mental health than his brother going on a crime rampage. Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, I don't think either of them is by any means the sole reason for how he is now, and having been through it and everything. I think in some respects, you know, he's quite a resistant person and everything, but you know, having your grandfather as well also pass away whilst you were away from home, where he did live with his grandfather and looked after him. I mean, I think that will also have a major impact in it, sort of the fact that it just happened in a sort of almost offhand type of way. So it just kind of gets, you know, brushed under the rug when various other tumultuous and regretful events are going on. You know, I mean, obviously no one wants their brother to be arrested in that kind of circumstance, and I wouldn't wish it on him in the, you know, in any respect whatsoever. I mean, his brother would appear on videos a bit, talking in the background. Sometimes he seemed quite, you know, hyped up and a bit, you know, like getting noisy, and it was a bit difficult, particularly because Mandela Man doesn't have like a separate mic or, you know, very good sound sometimes. So, but you know, his other brother also has got problems, without going into it, of pretty much the same kind of sort. And then, yeah, it's just unfortunate, and I do feel sorry for him, absolutely. And mostly, I think I would wish that he just took a lot of time, you know, to like, if he just said, okay, for the next year, I'm just going to look after myself, you know, and my grandma and things like that, and stay at home, you know, not start going somewhere just because he has a car, which really led to obviously the situations they found themselves in. I mean, yeah, I don't think really the root of all his problems is being banned from Disneyland. That's just one aspect of it, you know. I mean, I will say, in terms of fantasy, fairy tale flicks, etc., Mr. Dukic, I mean, I'm not really a big fan of that kind of thing anyway. personally, but maybe you can recommend to other people, Soviet ones, etc. I mean, I think it's a hard sell for some people, but I know people who might be from Ukraine or Russia, etc., and they like the Russian version of Sherlock Holmes. So there's obviously quite a big choice of things to watch. Yeah, I mean, we'll be honest. I don't think I'm going to be able to do a watch along of those with Johnny or something like that at this point, when I want to be focusing on this A Murder at the End of the World and other new things that are coming out. I mean, I would only say to Johnny, he's got his own channel and everything. He should do watch alongs on there, and you have to do it from your own, interests, rather than just like, say, people in the channel are recommending to watch various things. It's got to be something that you would naturally gravitate towards yourself. And in the past, I did a watch along of The Guardian, directed by William Friedkin, and that got I think a few thousand views, and then also we did a video with me and Voltaire, where it was Amityville 2: The Possession, which I wouldn't by any means claim is a really good film, but I think it's for that kind of a film, an Amityville type of film, it's quite well done, even if it's sort of almost unsavory. It's got elements in it which you just think, why exactly is this in the film? And I've watched, there's people on YouTube who've done their own commentaries, and also I've seen a person who was talking about how that film by Damiani or something like that, a Italian director who couldn't speak American even on the set, apparently. He wanted the film to actually be stronger than it was in terms of its content, like having a scene where Burt Young's character demonstrably raped his wife from behind, to put it nicely. I mean, this guy was like saying, oh yeah, I think that should have been in the film. I mean, the film has enough stuff in it already, which is going to be offensive, obviously, to some people. For me, watching it, I'm just like, especially when I first saw it, I'm thinking, this is a bit different to what I normally see in horror films I've recorded off ITV or something. It's late night TV, as it used to be, and there used to be, say, a horror film on, and then there's the incest scene, like the daughter and the son who becomes possessed are very, very close from the start of the film. They're like hugging each other, but like really close, not like just, oh yeah, we're moving into a new house, sister, or something. Like, oh, let's kind of get really close and press our bodies on each other because we're really into it. I mean, yeah. So it suggests basically from the starting of the film, even from the starting scenes, that the film, there is not necessarily a massive possession going on. It's like these things were in the family anyway. If there is any form of possession, all it does is just make worse what was already there, and and demonstrate it in the worst way imaginable, which is quite different to something like The Exorcist, where it's an innocent girl who's obviously just maybe a bit troubled, but things escalate, majorly. So it has an unseemly flavour to it, Amityville: The Possession, particularly up until the exorcism of the son of the family. I mean, then it sort of descends into a courtroom drama, which is a bit dry, and you're just thinking, okay, this has just been done for an American audience, because particularly Americans seem to like courtroom dramas. And the same thing actually happened with many years later with 2004, was it, or no, 2005's The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which has a very good cast, but it has a good start and everything for the most part, but then it just becomes a courtroom drama. So I don't really understand why that was the case, but probably studios saying, we've got to do this to appeal to a general audience rather than just an audience who are into incest between a brother and sister, whilst the lad is demonically possessed, which isn't necessarily the film for everyone. But yeah, apparently that scene in Amityville 2, The Possession, also is supposed to happen, or supposed to go on for much longer. And I mean, it goes on long enough, really, in the edit that I've seen of the film. So, yeah, apparently the director was, very much a dyed-in-the-wool Catholic who wanted to express something of his, I'm not sure whether it's distaste or distrust of the Catholic Church and things like this, but I honestly can't know. I don't know. And I mean, I don't know even if the cast or crew knew, because he couldn't speak much American or English, I should say. So. Hello, Tim Nicol. I see you've come back again. You're back again. Labyrinth and Never Ending Story, along with Flash Gordon, are my 3 Xmas movies. Well, I mean, they're all excellent films, I will say. Yeah, pretty much. I'm not so familiar with Flash Gordon in some ways, but I know that was really, well directed, and has some interesting sequences of editing and stuff that was like subliminal editing in some parts, because it was discussed by Rob Ager, who I met, one of my close personal friends at the Morecambe Festival. So he did a video on that, I think. Flash Gordon, though, was directed by the same director who made Get Carter, though, wasn't it? Unless I'm getting mixed up, let me just check. Directed by Mike Hodges. Died aged 90 last year. He directed Croupier in later years, which was great. Another one was actually I'll Sleep When I'm Dead. He was the original director on Damien Omen 2. I can only imagine his version of the film would have been better if he finished it. And yeah, called Get Carter. So that's pretty unusual for a film. I mean, he's a bit like a bit of a, art type of director, or auteur, you could call it maybe a bit like Lynch, who directed all sorts of different films, Black Rainbow with Rosanna Arquette in 1989. I've watched that one. It's filmed in a sort of deserted town in South Carolina or North Carolina with Tom Hulce, Jason Robards. Little bit of a Twin Peaksy kind of film in a sense before Twin Peaks. Same time, really. He's a good director, Mike Hodges. And for a director of his pedigree to be making what is ostensibly a superhero film is obviously, I mean, that's only can be a good thing, compared to sort of one of these modern day superhero movies, which for the most part I don't know all the directors of them apart from Joss Whedon, who made the first Avengers film, and that one was actually not bad. Having a good director definitely helps. Facebook users are dumber than most Redditors, but Redditors are very annoying. Well, some can be, but that's probably just because they they are anonymous, and you can have arguments more, but it's probably mainly confined to things like political forums or ones where people are just getting petty about certain shows or something. I don't know. I don't really think, like, if you go to the Murder at the End of the World forum on there on Reddit, the pages, it's really good. There's none of that sort of pettiness or people falling out with each other over grievances. I mean, there's basically a crossover between people who are watching that show who maybe haven't seen the OA, but I imagine a lot of the people who watch it have seen the OA, from the previous, from Britt Marling and Zach Batman Leach. Strange name, Batman Leach is his name. I think, a show like that, is something which just comes in like only once, under a blue moon, really. So it's good to sort of watch it whilst it's premiering, and it's premiering here on Tuesdays, which is the original day for when Twin Peaks premiered in the UK. So that's good. Yeah, I do actually play the stylophone. Thank you for that, Milia. Richard used to really enjoy it when I would just play that, when he just started talking or something, and you could see like the anger, the fury on his face as I came in with it, But I was actually trying to create a good soundtrack to the proceedings. Dan Peake, have you seen Saltburn? I saw it earlier. It's worth watching. It reminds me of American Psycho in that all of the characters are unlikable but still engaging. Well, yeah, I've seen the trailer for it, and it's the main character by that Barry Keoghan, or however you say his name. Is he not sympathetic at all as the main character? Like, I would have expected him to be a bit sympathetic, considering he's sort of doesn't come from that moneyed class, the almost, I don't know whether it's sort of aristocratic, basically, the people who are living in Saltburn, and he meets them at either it's Oxford or Cambridge, whichever, Oxbridge. I think it's a timely film, especially after we've had, in this country now about 13 years of the Conservatives, and it seems like every one of their leaders, certainly any of the leaders that lasted for a while, were Oxbridge educated, and just how, regardless of any particular political party anyway, I mean, it's particularly the case with Tories and their support for, like, private education and everything. But I think, it's just prevalent in political spheres as well, generally, which is, I think, a shame, for people to be educated in these sort of places for toffs, basically, because in no way does it, like, I don't think it makes somebody in any way better equipped for those kind of jobs as politicians or anything, really. All it does is mostly, at a relatively early age, it gives them a sense of confidence and bravado, and I imagine that's what Saltburn is partly about. The kind of bravado that led David Cameron to put his penis into a pig's mouth, or smash up restaurants as part of their, hilarious hijinks as whatever they were doing as students and things like this. I would imagine the film includes things like that. In terms of the film, Dan, did you actually see that in the cinema, or have you watched it illegally? Please tell me, I need to know. Not because I'll be reporting you to the police or the FBI or anything. I mean, yeah, it's a stylish film, Tantum. I liked it. Yeah, it is necessary, Davron, because everything I said was true. So therefore, people can make up their own, uh, they can make up their own opinion, can't they? If you're so, full in your kind of general dislike of Cameron, which you've voiced to me endlessly in messages, then you would have no problem voicing it here as well, and just admitting and holding your hands up, basically, that you are in a massive stew and gone crazy because Cameron blocked you. That's it. Yeah, this comment showcases just how much sort of your sensitivity and empathy is like lacking, because you're bringing up like Cameron using his 5-year-old son in videos. Okay, fine. If you don't want to see a child in a video like that on YouTube, then make sure you unsubscribe from the channel and don't watch it if it's such a big deal to you, and you think it's wrong in some way. If you don't agree with Cameron releasing videos saying Lynch is up to this, that, or the other, or might be, again, the only answer is to just not watch it. That's it. I mean, all I can say is I'm really sorry that Cameron has just like basically, ruined your whole life by blocking you, because it means you've not got another outlet to go onto and then stand around on like a street corner talking like an old woman with other old women. Have you heard what Cameron did? Yes, I know. He put out another video saying that that David Lynch is making a flipping 5-minute film of himself going to the toilet. Oh, he did. Yes, he did, and it's got a monkey in it. And also, his son is on the video, and you know how old his son is? 5. Oh dear. Beggars belief, doesn't it? Phantom Cooper says, I watched The Killer. It honestly felt like a lamer version of the Hitman games. I didn't like it personally. I watched the first hour of it and I was just like, this is not very good. I thought that, considering that many people, including Davron in here, liked Mindhunter, then there were 2 seasons of that, and David Fincher said that Netflix won't fund any more of it because of the audience it was getting doesn't warrant the budget. But I can imagine that the budget for The Killer is obviously less than anything like this Mindhunter series, because it's fairly sort of thrifty and just shot on the hoof, as it were, or on foot, kind of. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe the second half is fantastic, but I don't know what to think of it, really. A random question there from Charlotte. Well, it wasn't going to be necessarily just about Audrey. It's like, Audrey may have gone to Hollywood basically in it, and then her role may have been the one that became Betty, essentially. So it would have been, especially if it was made into a series, then it would have also had like a whole bunch of storylines, stemming from that. And you could have even had an appearance by Agent Cooper. So Get Carter holds up. Probably my favourite British gangster film. Long Good Friday is a close second. Ornella Muti as Princess Aura in Flash Gordon. She's also in the Umberto Lenzi film An Ideal Place to Kill. Right, Gary, thank you for that. I don't want to spoil the ending of Saltburn, says Dan, but all of the characters are quite vampiric, not sympathetic. Yes, saw it in the cinema today. I mean, I should have really gone to see that in the cinema on Friday, but instead I went to see Thanksgiving because it was directed by Eli Roth, and I saw a 4 out of 5 review for it. So I thought, well, I want to go and see something that's relatively light, you know, in terms of its just sort of like a fun watch. But I wouldn't necessarily give it 4 out of 5 myself, but yeah, I could imagine it doing quite well. Thanksgiving amongst the horror crowd, but wasn't necessarily my sort of thing particularly, because it just wasn't that funny for me on the whole. I mean, I don't know if I was missing something, but you know, seeing a grown woman stuffed into a kind of big oven and then cooked is not that funny, or funny at all, really. Some of it was just gross, and then some of it was also just a bit shocking because it's like somebody falling onto a bandsaw, you know, on their hand, and it's like just very squeamish inducing, or scream inducing even. But yeah, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. It was just it just felt like the start of a franchise and sort of fairly mainstream, but with fairly gnarly violence in it. So I think you can see on the screen now that I've got the where is it? Yeah, this is the Reddit for A Murder at the End of the World. So there's people obviously discussing the first episode on Fatal. Reminder about spoilers. Most recent post: transcension to a digital plane existence and other ideas. Which is a bit over my head, but on the other hand, there is the possibility within the show itself that some of the characters might be simulations, or that something is going on in terms of people being duped, you know. And the main character is given pills to take throughout so far, and there's only been 2 episodes. Also, you can't really trust the story particularly, but very well, because it's got, you know, it starts off with the first episode, obviously, and it has "This is the end," you know, by the Doors playing at the start of the episode. So it kind of makes you wonder, is this whole thing going to be told backwards? But in the end, it sort of really seems to be being told in no specific fashion, other than maybe from Darby, the main character's perspective in some ways. Like, she's played by Emma Corrin, who I didn't really know who she is until I've seen this, and she was in The Crown playing a version of Diana Spencer. There were more, you know, Princess Diana. There were more people playing her, but I'm not a fan of The Crown. I'm not a fan of the Royals and all that kind of thing, but I'm sure she was good in it. Apparently she was. The new Crown TV show was rated 1 out of 5 for having basically zombie Diana walking around, or ghost Diana, who's played by that very tall actress who is in Tenet. And yeah, that sounds just, I don't know. People should watch that film Spencer with Kristen Stewart. That's pretty good, actually, as far as anything concerning the royals is concerned, which I don't particularly have any interest in the royal family, but I think as just people, it shows, you know, her as just basically, you know, an unusual woman by all means, but who just became involved with the royals, you know, as you do. Well, obviously, it's far more detailed than that. She can just randomly meet Prince Charles one day and say, "I'm going to get married." But Yeah, there's a lot of different questions with regard to this show. I mean, obviously, it follows up the OA, which finished at 2 seasons. It was stopped by Netflix, cancelled. But the reality is that that show, as has been revealed in recent interviews with the makers, probably got about 30 million views in total. So if the OA can't be extended, beyond 2 seasons, and it's still got 30 million viewers, that seems like Netflix certainly puts on massive demands. But I imagine it must be in terms of the budget, of the film and of the show, and the OA definitely would have had a high budget, as would this one, A Murder at the End of the World. But this is made for Disney and Hulu, and it's showing in the UK on Disney. It's advertised. I've seen it advertised in a local shopping centre. So, and it's also the #1 show in the world now. I don't know how long that'll carry on. I mean, I think as far as Emma Corrin is as the main character, she's a bit unreadable in that she doesn't really have many facial expressions throughout it. She's got like an unusually wide front set of teeth, just as Britt Marling has. I don't know if that was involved with the casting, but her boyfriend in it is good. He was in Triangle of Sadness. Clive Owen is in it, but so far he's not really been in it that much. Britt Marling is in it, and she's been in it in a few scenes. When they're actually going to Iceland in it, when they go to the retreat that she's invited to, it's she's joined right next to her on the plane by Joan Chen, of course, who was in Twin Peaks, Josie Packard. And it's the start of the episode, really, well, halfway through maybe, and she's prominent in those scenes. And she's one of the first ones who gives Darby a tablet as well, as in a tablet that you take. Emma Corrin, I don't know if she's Australian or you're talking about the other one in Tenet. But anyway, everybody should watch A Murder at the End of the World. It's really, I would say for me, at least one of the best shows I've seen since Twin Peaks: The Return. So, and I saw, for instance, a not so fairly recent one on Sky called The Third Day with Jude Law. That was a really good show. I like that. Maniac was a good one. I mean, Mindhunter was a good show, of course. But there've been others. But as far as ones that are a little bit different, I would definitely include this one in that sort of selection as being, very notable shows that have come out. And in a recent interview, Britt Marling said, well, Twin Peaks came back, so maybe the OA will come back. But especially, obviously, if this one if this one does well. And I will say that there are probably an absolute multitude of references to the OA in this show, absolutely. And I would say it most definitely exists in the same universe, or at least even in the imagination of the characters in the OA. I don't know. It does feel quite dreamlike as well. This one particularly, I think. So yeah, these people have just really gone into, just taking it on themselves to just like make a whole transcript of the first episode, questions about every little bit about the thing. I mean, you can sort of look at it different ways, in terms of the script, in terms of all of the dialogue and the characters' actions, etc. But then just on a visual level, there's a lot of visual references to the OA. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And I think we'll have to get to discussing all of those when I actually do a video exclusively about it. But just wanted to recommend it to everyone. And yeah, it's also really, especially the first episode, I thought it was the highlight one, and that's actually directed by Britt Marling. On the second viewing of it, I really thought it was excellent. It's just one of these shows that you're spellbound by it from beginning to end. So that's unusual in terms of TV, where a lot of it can feel, just ordinary, I suppose. Nothing that a lot of TV shows can feel quite formulaic, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of questions in terms of Prince Andrew, for instance. Why is he not being completely ousted from the royal family? Really, the royals had Prince Charles, his best mate was Jimmy Savile, just about, and I mean that raises a lot of questions. So. Oh, Davern's back. And still, not one word about the merit of the actual content of Mr. C, his dad's official Lynch announcement. Okay, Davern, so you expect people in my chat, when we're talking about a murder at the end of the world, to start talking about the merits of Cameron saying there's going to be a new Lynch project, when basically, also, you didn't like Twin Peaks: The Return, you didn't like Inland Empire, you haven't watched Lost Highway. As far as I'm aware, you didn't really like Mulholland Drive. I mean, honestly, what is there in this for you? And secondly, if you think that there's absolutely no truth in anything Cameron says, why don't you just make up like a different account on Facebook and then message Cameron about that? It really has nothing to do with me, does it? And anyway, in terms of my own perspective on any truth in Lynch being creative at the moment, there is probably some truth to it, yes. So there's not zero truth to it. You're wrong on that one. But I will say, I just don't know why you're beating on about it in here, or beating off really about it, I would say, when nobody else in the chat is even seemingly interested, really, much about it. As far as I'm concerned, I didn't make a video saying, what is Lynch doing now? Is he filming in that restaurant, etc.? I just, when that news came out, I said, it's possible. But at the same time, I don't really think that's the entirety of, what we could know about what Lynch is up to. Like, from what I've heard, he's far more now spending his time and, with no doubt awareness that he's not got a million years to just mess about. If he wants more time to think and more time to be creative, he has to be in an atmosphere, in an environment which allows that. So it's, making the most of what kind of place he lives in and all these kind of things. I mean, if he released like a 90-minute video film or whatever that's filmed on his own property, and maybe a few other places, like, I would find that great. But I mean, I don't know. I don't really have that much expectation. Just as I didn't really like before, say, I mean, ever since basically Inland Empire, I've thought, Lynch clearly now is not that interested in making conventional cinema as much as any films of his were that conventional. I mean, I think Blue Velvet was relatively conventional. Even Warner Hart to some extent. I mean, the Twin Peaks pilot was, which I thought was excellent, had a definite some appeal, to a more wider audience. As soon as it got to like Lost Highway in particular, and then even Mulholland Drive, really, which I think is probably the last thing that Lynch did, which is approachable to a general audience. I mean, that's now 22 years ago. So it's pretty unlikely that he's going to go and just sort of make another film similar to Blue Velvet or Mulholland Drive again. I can't really. What would be the point of just making the same film in some ways? That's probably how he sees it. But I do think that Lynch is still creative in some sense or another. And, another thing I heard about was that, I mean, Lynch has always been very much into secrecy. And not only is that just his thing as such, I think there is a real reason for it when it comes down to funding, etc. That it's good to keep things, underneath the radar as such. If everything is basically out there and people know exactly what film you're making and stuff like this, like funders and people like that start to get a bit nervous. And if things go wrong, I don't know. I mean, I think secrecy in filmmaking, etc., can be a good thing for sure. And particularly with Lynch's style of filmmaking. But also in terms of his own daily life, ever since, for instance, he went offline about a year ago or so and just hasn't come back on. I mean, that would suggest that there's something else taking his attention. And I don't think he's just suddenly started making lots of like train sets, and I've read people saying things like that Lynch doesn't like interruptions and doesn't like, phone calls coming through all the time, which just interrupt his creative flow and things like that. So he's sort of cut off from all that, from, in particular, I suppose, mobile phones. I mean, Lynch always had that phone visible when he was doing his weather reports and things like that, but at his sort of desk. But that's, that's a landline, so it's different. Yeah, I think it's pretty much just pretty obvious that Lynch, especially at his age, is probably one of these guys who's just like not fond of mobile phones, and he wants to work and do whatever he's doing now in a completely, controllable atmosphere, controllable environment, I mean. So he feels like he's almost, like back at art school or something. Because, he is basically that. He is like an art school director. And, it'll be a shame when he's no longer around, obviously, because there's not that many of those kinds of directors, even though there are probably quite a lot of other interesting directors, by all means. But, so, yeah. I think it's entirely possible to say that Lynch is most likely up to something. If you've got to hedge your bets and you wanted to make a video, like if I wanted to make a video saying that kind of thing, the only thing that would stop me is saying, oh, I heard somebody comment on some message board somewhere that Lynch has gone like really under the radar and he doesn't want mobile phones around him or any interruptions. Like, that doesn't sound very convincing, does it? It just sounds like, okay, so basically you believe something that somebody's written on a forum, where you weren't even in the conversation with these people or whatever. You don't know who these people are because maybe it's on Reddit or something. It's so. Yeah, I think like it's just it's not something I stand in judgment on anybody, like Cameron making a video like that to say that Lynch is doing something and he's back, baby, or something like that. I mean, if you have a comment like that, sorry, if you have a title like that, obviously he's doing it in jest, in part, as much as you might want to know that this is true or not. But with Davrin, like, Mr. Dukic here, you seem to be obsessed with the idea rather than the fact that I don't think you're particularly bothered whether Lynch is doing something or not, but you're more interested in trying to find fault with Cameron, which, like, I don't know, it just seems like you would like it if this show was basically how it was going back 6 years or something, where there was a bit of a feud between me and Cameron over Twin Peaks Worldwide, basically. Nothing to do with any of this stuff, just over a page on Facebook. And now we get on, generally, we get on completely just like any normal people would, as such, if you can believe it. I mean, I'm not sure how normal I am, but I can imagine I might be difficult for some people to correspond with, So, I feel every bit of sympathy for Cameron having to deal with me in some ways. And nowadays, if I do write to him, I try and maybe make like something of a humorous comment, something funny. I don't want everything to be some kind of high blood pressure lunge into the void, Yeah, I mean, I think Blue Velvet is good, definitely, Gary, but it's not his only best work. I think various films of his are his best ones. That's my view, anyway. But I'm not really a person who will have a chart, like number 1 to 10 or something. So. I think Blue Velvet is really good. But at the same time, I wouldn't mind seeing a 4-hour Blue Velvet, But. I just took an ashwagandha tablet there. Netflix seems to have an aversion to third seasons. It's a shame they aren't more like HBO. They let David Simon finish The Wire, despite it never having great viewing figures. Charlotte says she's never been disappointed with Lynch. If you've not seen the like 3-episode Hotel Room by Lynch, I think you would enjoy that one. Obviously, particularly the first and third one, Charlotte, but directed by Lynch. I think that would be an interesting one for you to watch. I mean, you've probably already seen it, I don't know, but it feels a bit more like a stage play or something. And given Lynch's sort of situation, I mean, with the pandemic and everything, of course, which is still going on, really, and now, if he wants to make something which is smaller, something like Hotel Room could be a good thing to do. What did Jack do? Phantom Cooper. Yeah, I mean, that was not designed as a, that was not designed really as a standalone film or something, because it was made for a film festival in 2016, and then Netflix just decided to put it out. which seemed interesting and fed into all of the ideas that Lynch was going to be making something with Netflix. But I think if that was ever going to happen at that time, then the pandemic must have affected things. But I really don't think it was just because of the pandemic. I don't think anything was set with Netflix. Just because they're showing one short by Lynch on there, it doesn't mean, oh, right, we're going to be showing, you know, a whole new series by Lynch or something. So for all I know, there might have been talks, but yeah. Well, I definitely recommended it. I recommend it, sorry, Mrs. Nightstar. The Werewolf, indeed. So I will leave you tonight. It's 11:30 here, really. So thank you to everyone who joined in. And I'll be seeing you all in the trees.